Welcome to Lincoln Fire and Rescue. I'm sitting down today with Fire Chief Michael Despain to cover a lot of items that are especially of interest out of Lincoln Fire and Rescue. Thank you very much for joining us today, Chief. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good to be here again.
I want to start with a little insight. I had the privilege to be able to experience that new fire engine smell out of Station 3. Right. I was visiting my friends there the other day. They had a call. I went along. That engine is, and all the engines that are new in the city are state of the art. They're very nice.
Right. I know the crews are very happy. I'm surprised there was a new engine smell because some of those crews didn't wait more than 24 hours and they were on big fires. So usually they reek of smoke inside.
Not this one.
After that one. But I guess they've done a good job of trying to clean that one up and
quiet and smooth. The environment for the firefighters and the paramedics inside those engines and trucks is so vastly improved.
Well, for me, the fact that it starts, that it gets to the call, it pumps water, and it doesn't drop transmission fluid on the middle of the street, O Street going down the road, that's certainly a benefit because now the person that called 911 got service in a timely manner versus not getting service in a timely manner. So we're pleased with that. We ordered another apparatus about a month ago, but it'll take a good year to show up. And then next budget year, we'll certainly be asking for more to get the fleet caught back up. But the 5 or so that we have so far was a good first step.
So props to my good friends at Station 3 for allowing me to go along. We turn to gas leaks. Right. There have been several recently, and there will be more by the time our viewers watch our conversation here today. But by the end of July of this past year, there had been more natural gas leaks in Lincoln than all of last year. 70 at the end of the 7th month. In all of 2016, there were 67 natural gas leaks. October was the only double-digit month for gas leaks last year, 11 in that month. This year, January, February, May, June, July, August, and October have all had double digits for natural gas leaks in Lincoln. So at this time of the conversation, we have just slightly more than 105. There may have been 1 or 2 at the time just before this taping. So admittedly, it's been a heavy year for gas leaks for LFR, but again, I'll put it into perspective that 24-some thousand calls total in a year for LFR, so 105 isn't, but it's still a matter that you take seriously and you have to address.
Right, so the real issue I don't think is gas leaks, because every community has gas leaks and we are going to continue to have gas leaks far into the future. I think the controversy that the community feels is one is the frequency and the severity and really how it impacts them. They're the displaced from their home or their property. They can't get into their neighborhood or they can't get down a certain street because we've got it blocked off or the streets department has it blocked off. But the reality is that we have to take it serious, but we also look at it in the perspective of framing the as a whole. So a good example would be the number of gas leaks that we're going to are increasing, and we don't necessarily like that, but we're willing to live with it because of the benefit that's going to come on the back end. The linear feet that they're putting in every single day continues to grow exponentially, yet our call volume doesn't grow necessarily exponentially. So what we're seeing is there's a lot more digging. They're getting better at trying to locate and workarounds and how to avoid problem areas, or they've already been in the problem areas and now they're kind of venturing out into the areas that are not. So the good news is that we believe that the frequency of strikes are getting less in terms of the linear feet. So they're putting in more with less strikes, but there still are more strikes and that's an impact. But the way it was explained to me, and I think this is pretty valuable for the listeners to understand, is just like some communities were fighting for Google Fiber back in the day, and that was a big ticket item where the communities were competing hard to get that. Well, a lot of that didn't come to fruition. Something happened partway through, maybe they did part of the city or they didn't finish it or the program died. This is similar to it, even though it's not affiliated with Google. It is a local provider that's putting, or different providers, but mainly one provider that's putting this in the ground. Lincoln will be one of the only communities that has high-speed, broadband-capable fiber optic in the region, if not many places in the United States. And a private company put it in, and at the end of the day, We believe this digging season, if you will, this spike will go on for about another 11 months, and then we anticipate a steady decline over time. And at the end, Lincoln's going to have a very powerful economic generator. The way it was explained to me, I'm not the expert in the back end, but the way it was explained to me, it made sense. So it's a necessary nuisance. It's an investment in the future. Certainly, we do everything we can to help mitigate it. We wish firefighters don't want to go on it, and I don't want them going on it. But at the end of the day, those providers are paying their fair share when that happens. So we're getting reimbursed through the general fund. So at the end of the day, the economic impact is still there, but it's not huge. But it is a nuisance, and we still have to treat it as a significant incident until it's mitigated.
So let that sink in. All things being equal, if I'm Company A and I'm looking at Omaha, Kansas City, Des Moines,
Right.
and all things being equal, Lincoln has a citywide high-speed fiber optic network. That's going to be attractive.
Right. And maybe the best way to say it is wherever I go into Lincoln, I have that capability of easily accessing super high-speed internet, if you will, and that if I have remote people working from home or I have a workforce that's remote, they have access to, and so that ability to network in your building, to get out to the internet, to interact within the community itself is tremendously more powerful here, capacity-wise, than in many other communities. And so, yeah, I think that's the gist of the argument, is that that's going to be an economic generator for Lincoln for many
And
years.
let's point out that these companies are doing their due diligence. Allo, Spectrum, anyone else doing boring around the city. They're checking maps, they're getting permits, they're calling 811 or the equivalent of an 811 that you have to call and I have to call when we dig in our yards. So why is it still happening?
Well, they are doing their due diligence, but sometimes it is literally a question of an honest mistake, maybe the best way to explain it. So someone may came out, so the utility service will come out and mark it. They come out to get ready to dig. Well, sometimes they've marked it in the wrong location, and that's maybe a mistake from the person marking it, or their map is so old that's the best guess they had of where a certain line is. In this case, it's gas lines, but it could be sewer, it could be water, it could be any other underground utilities. Or sometimes it's an area where it's been, they've redone that line, and so where they mark it is in the right location vertically. But as they dig down, they'll say, okay, now I've got to this first pipe, I know where it's at, let's bore around it, and then they hit another pipe and they realize, well, that's actually the gas line, this is the old one, and whoever put it in didn't take the old one out. So they, again, honest mistake. Now, another side benefit of this is as many strikes and as much underground utility locating they've done is we have the chance to update our GIS map. So the city has a much more robust, accurate GIS layer mapping now. So in the future, it's easier to find these because now we do know the exact location and they're much more refined. Some places were located on pencil-drawn maps, 50 years ago, and some of them are more recent, and so this updates the system.
How do you derive at the balance of assigning resources so you don't have too many resources there and have to call upon other stations end to hand, or that you don't have enough resources there and you have to call in more?
Right. Well, we historically look at these call types and what they require, and not necessarily at the worst case scenario, but let's say 9 times out of 10, this is the scenario we see, and so we send the resources required to handle that size of an incident. And we also have equipment that we need to bring, and if you look at a gas leak, it could be this plume of what could be flammable gas, and we don't know where the perimeter is of that, where are the edges of that, and so you can't just use one engine company or one crew to find that out. We need multiple areas. You're looking inside buildings. You may be having sensors and monitors that are looking for that perimeter so we know what to stay away from. But it just depends on the buildings, where the leak's at. Sometimes the leak can be traveling underground for a little ways before it comes up, and it scrubs some of the odorant out of it. So it truly is odorless gas, but it's explosive. But typically the incident commander, once they kind of see what they have, then they'll determine, do they need more resources or less? And sometimes they send the ones that they don't need. I can handle this with 2 or 3 companies and we're fine. Sometimes they need more and they're calling for more. Sometimes they just have to call more out to switch them out because it's a hot day or it's a very cold day and the crews are out there for hours on end and they're trying to rotate them so they can get a meal and go back to the station and finish out their daily routine too while other people are covering the call. So it just depends on the call that comes out. But the advantage that we have now is we have done it enough times that everybody is very understanding of kind of how to get things done quicker and faster, so they're about as efficient as they can get right now.
And I hear on dispatch they're calling the utility. That's one of the
Yep.
first calls. Get the utility rep down there.
Yep.
Get it taken care of. Get it capped.
Yeah. So remember when they have a strike and we come out and isolate the area, even though you're mad at the fire department for blocking the streets, we have no control. We don't mitigate the leak. We don't stop the leak. We're not necessarily qualified. We will if we have to. I mean, if it's just dire emergency. But this is a utility has struck it. It's their job to come as the hazmat provider, because technically it's a hazardous material once it releases. Their job is to come in and secure that Black Hills Energy or whoever it is. So they have to usually come back and locate an area, upstream and downstream of where the leak is, locate it, dig, isolate that with a valve or pinch it off from both ends so then they can secure this leak but not stop service to the rest of the area above or below stream. So
Let's pivot to the insurance, a subject about insurance. Something happens in Lincoln on January. January 1st of next year. That hasn't happened in Lincoln since 1974. The Insurance Services Office this past October notified the city that its fire protection rating is being upgraded from Class 3 to Class 2. And the big takeaway for some citizens watching us today is that this will reduce their home insurance rates.
it could, yeah. So that rating, that insurance ISO rating, as we would call it, is a component of a formula that your typical insurance provider will use for your property. And one thing about Lincoln is that it does look at aggregate fire loss over the entire city. So this is kind of our argument of, you may live in a north part of town and the south part is underserved because we don't have the new stations built yet, or the eastern side. But fires over there can adversely impact your rates because aggregate fire loss is the number one determiner of what you're going to pay for the fire premium portion of your insurance. Not all of your insurance, but the premium portion. So by building stations and improving our ISO rating, what happens, that puts downward pressure on that fire premium. Now, you could have had bad storm damage, you could have had some thefts to your property, and so fire might have stayed the same or gone down, but these have gone up, and you might say, well, my insurance still went up. That's a very much a case-by-case basis depending on your experience. However, if we had not done what we have done, all those would have went up and your fire premium would have went up. And so at the end of the day, it is a minor component, but a little bit here and a little bit there certainly add up. Some of our estimates from some insurance providers have shown us where going from a 3 to a 2 on that ISO class would lower insurance on the fire premium in Lincoln, in some cases about $80 to $100 a year. So if you're paying $700, $800, $1,000 for your homeowner's insurance for that year, that may not be much, but it's still $100, that you get back in your pocket. And so that's part of the value that we provide, is the level of service. Is part of our job is for the money you spend to provide general fund tax money to support the fire department, our job is to push insurance rates down. Because the argument could be made that if you close the fire department down, you save $100 per person, but you're going to spend, your insurance on your house may go up $1,000, $2,000 a year, or you may not even be able to get insurance. Some cases in California where they've seen large loss fires, there are areas where many providers won't even provide it anymore. It's not about the cost, they won't provide it anymore because of the loss, because there's just not adequate fire protection. So that's how they work together.
Does going from a 3 to a 2 mean something different for LFR than it does for the city? I never know who to give credit to. Everybody gets credit. I know what you mean, because fire hydrant locations, fire station locations, those sorts of things. But it also goes to the service of the men and women in LFR. Yeah,
so the majority of this 100-point rating, if you will, goes to the fire department because it's just the heaviest in terms of stations and resources. But there's a portion of it that goes to the 911 Communications Center and to the water portion of your public utilities, our Public Works Department. So Public Works and 911, those people definitely need to get some recognition in this because we can't do it alone. In fact, if you looked at the math, what it showed was at the end was The communication center scored very well within the points they're allocated. The water division scored very well within the points they're allocated. LFR did not do that well, but when you combine them together, it was enough to get us over the hump. So it is our belief that we would be very competitive in reaching an ISO Class 1, which is the best you can get. But that's not something we would spend a lot of time and energy to do. I think it would be just a side benefit to the investments we would want to make for the outcomes we're looking for. But I certainly think that's a possibility in the future. So I'll brag a little bit and say that that's what we're shooting for, but that's not our primary motive to get there.
And again, let's let this sink in. Out of 48,000 fire protection areas in this country, almost 1,400, that's less than 3%, have a Class 2. Lincoln has a Class 2. 12 of them are in Nebraska. So, kudos. Don't want time to get away from us, Chief, without talking about recruits. There's another recruit class scheduled for February. You have it scratched on the calendar in February?
Well, we have one started right now,
right?
And they're about a month or so into their training. They'll come out around Christmas time, and then they'll, as part of their training is in the street. So that academy is in place. We're already starting recruitment for the next round. So that application period would open around January, and we would progress as fast as we can to get that group on, with an idea of hopefully bringing them on, getting them into an academy somewhere around September of next year. So there's always about a year, it's a 10-month lag from the time we recruit, we get them on, we get them into the academy. If you talk about the time it takes to recruit and get them all the way through and hit the street as staffing, I mean, they're actually servicing the community as a standalone firefighter ready to go. It's almost 18 months. So it's we have to really think chest-wise. You got to think quite a few moves ahead of where you need to be and what you need to recruit for. But we're still hurting for paramedics. So my shameless plug, if you don't mind, is if you are a paramedic in the system, especially in the local area, or you're thinking about it, Community College South SCC has a program there. Creighton has a program. There's a number of programs in the region. Go there, and once you come out, come see me, and we'll want to talk. So
I suggest going to the video. There's a video on the fire department website, lincoln.ne.gov, link over to LFR, and you'll see the recruiting video.
Right. And we're updating a few of those. In fact, what we'll do is in early January, when the recruitment starts, we'll have it open for a month, just so there's plenty of time to get candidates. We'll actually do some workshops where people can come down, kind of listen to a short presentation and ask questions, and we'll have existing firefighter medics that are in the room to answer questions one-on-one if you want. What does it take to be a firefighter paramedic with Lincoln? What can I do to improve my odds? What can I do to prepare myself? It could be for the people that aren't necessarily qualified for the job today, but they're interested in it down the road. We're kind of we're not only trying to plant seeds for this one, but also future years. So
you'd like to have 4 a year? 4 recruiting cycles, 3
well, we
recruiting
couldn't.
cycles per year?
Well, that would be great, but unfortunately, there's this applicant pool that you're trying to draw from in the local area, and it's kind of like fishing out of the same pond. That you need a little bit of time for it to restock. So, at best, this last time we got 2 academies in 1 year. Technically, we got 2 in 1 year, but really, it's tough to get more than 1 in 1 year. So, our goal is 1 per year, and just keep recruiting until we get caught up with our numbers. But that will be many years before we're there.
All right. Now you're all caught up. Thank you, Chief, very much for coming. Thanks, everybody, for watching us today on LNK TV.